In like manner, those words that have streamed forth from the source of power and descended from the heaven of glory are innumerable and beyond the ordinary comprehension of man. To them that are possessed of true understanding and insight, the Surah of Hud surely sufficeth. Ponder a while those holy words in your heart, and, with utter detachment, strive to grasp their meaning. Examine the wondrous behavior of the prophets, and recall the defamations and denials uttered by the children of negation and falsehood. Perchance you may cause the bird of the human heart to wing its flight away from the abodes of heedlessness and doubt unto the nest of faith and certainty, and drink deep from the pure waters of ancient wisdom, and partake of the fruit of the tree of divine knowledge. Such is the share of the pure in heart of the bread that hath descended from the realms of eternity and holiness. Shouldst thou acquaint thyself with the indignities heaped upon the prophets of God, and apprehend the true causes of the objections voiced by their oppressors, thou wilt surely appreciate the significance of their position. Moreover, the more closely thou observest the denials of those who have opposed the manifestations of the divine attributes, the firmer will be thy faith in the cause of God. Accordingly, a brief mention will be made in this tablet of divers accounts relative to the prophets of God, that they may demonstrate the truth that throughout all ages and centuries the manifestations of power and glory have been subjected to such heinous cruelties that no pen dare describe them. Perchance this may enable a few to cease to be perturbed by the clamor and protestations of the divines and the foolish of this age, and cause them to strengthen their confidence and certainty. As always, Baha'u'llah's writings abound with beauty and depth, and their melody is even more captivating in the original language. Before we explore some of his points here, let us take Surah Hud as a reference, since Baha'u'llah mentions it on a few occasions. We don't need to read it now, but it will serve as a helpful point of connection. Main theme. The surah emphasizes faith, patience, steadfastness, and trust in God, especially during times of adversity. It recounts the stories of several prophets, including Noah Nuh, Hud, Salih, Ibrahim, Lot, Shu'aib, and Moses Musa, all of whom faced opposition from their people. Key messages. 1. Unity of the prophets. Every prophet brought the same essential message: to worship God and act with justice. 2. Steadfastness in trials. The believers are urged to remain patient and constant even when truth is rejected by the majority. 3. Accountability and justice. The surah reminds that all communities are held accountable for their deeds. Pride, corruption, or denial of truth lead to downfall. 4. Hope and mercy. Despite its warnings, the surah also assures that God's mercy is vast and always open to those who repent and turn to Him. Baha'u'llah calls upon us to think, learn, make decisions, and act upon them. This brings us back to one of the central purposes of our creation, the power of will. Abdul Baha explains this beautifully in some answered questions. Certain matters are subject to the free will of man, such as acting with justice and fairness, or injustice and iniquity. In other words, the choice of good or evil actions. It is clear and evident that the will of man figures greatly in these actions, but there are certain matters where man is forced and compelled, such as sleep, death, sickness, failing powers, misfortune, and material loss. These are not subject to the will of man, and he is not accountable for them, for he is compelled to endure them. But he is free in the choice of good and evil actions, and it is of his own accord that he performs them. Baha'u'llah emphasizes the importance of increasing our confidence and certainty. This, perhaps, is for the peace of our minds and to strengthen our capacity to face life's challenges and tests. He also tells us that we may cause the bird of the human heart to wing its flight away from the abodes of heedlessness and doubt unto the nest of faith and certainty. Back to teaching again. Among the prophets was Noah. For 950 years he prayerfully exhorted his people and summoned them to the haven of security and peace. None, however, heeded his call. Each day they inflicted on his blessed person such pain and suffering that no one believed he could survive. How frequently they denied him, how malevolently they hinted their suspicion against him. Thus it hath been revealed. And as often as a company of his people passed by him, they derided him. To them he said, Though ye scoff at us now, we will scoff at you hereafter, even as ye scoff at us. In the end ye shall know. Long afterward, he several times promised victory to his companions and fixed the hour thereof. But when the hour struck, the divine promise was not fulfilled. This caused a few among the small number of his followers to turn away from him and to this testify the records of the best-known books. These you must certainly have perused, if not, undoubtedly you will. Finally, as stated in books and traditions, there remained with him only 40 or 72 of his followers. At last, from the depth of his being, he cried aloud, "Lord, leave not upon the land a single dweller from among the unbelievers." And now, consider and reflect a moment upon the waywardness of this people. What could have been the reason for such denial and avoidance on their part? What could have induced them to refuse to put off the garment of denial and to adorn themselves with a robe of acceptance? Moreover, what could have caused the non-fulfillment of the divine promise which led the seekers to reject that which they had accepted? Meditate profoundly, that the secret of things unseen may be revealed unto you, that you may inhale the sweetness of a spiritual and imperishable fragrance, and that you may acknowledge the truth that from time immemorial, even unto eternity, the Almighty hath tried, and will continue to try his servants, so that light may be distinguished from darkness, truth from falsehood, right from wrong, guidance from error, happiness from misery, and roses from thorns. Even as he hath revealed, do men think when they say, "We believe," they shall be let alone and not be put to proof? Here, Baha'u'llah draws upon the common understanding found in earlier scriptures, not to confirm that Noah literally lived or preached for 950 years, but to refer to what was familiar to his audience. There is a very important point here, the statement that the divine promise was not fulfilled. This is profound and represents a tremendous test of faith. Imagine being in such a situation. You have been given a clear promise by the manifestation of God, and yet it appears not to be fulfilled. The word Baha'u'llah uses for this concept is bada. Below is an explanation of what bada signifies. When God gives a promise and it appears not to be fulfilled, it does not mean that God has changed his mind or withdrawn his word. In divine understanding, this is what is referred to as bada. Bada signifies not a change in God's will, but rather the unfolding of a new aspect of his will, something that was hidden from human understanding until that moment. In truth, God's knowledge and purpose are perfect and unchanging. It is only our perception that changes as we come to see more of his plan revealed. What seems like an unfulfilled promise is, in reality, a test of faith and a means for the soul to grow in trust, patience, and insight into the wisdom of God. Another significant point is the hardships endured by the manifestations of God. As we discussed earlier, these trials serve both as a divine example for humanity and as the source of our understanding of the immense good that the manifestations of God bring into the world. Their suffering reveals the depth of their love and the purity of their purpose. This truth is expressed most powerfully in the Fire Tablet, where Baha'u'llah lays bare the pain, patience, and spiritual majesty of the manifestation in the face of affliction. And after Noah, the light of the countenance of Hud shone forth above the horizon of creation. For well nigh 700 years, according to the sayings of men, he exhorted the people to turn their faces and draw nearer unto the Ridvan of the divine presence. What showers of afflictions rained upon him, until at last his adjurations bore the fruit of increased rebelliousness, and his assiduous endeavors resulted in the willful blindness of his people. And their unbelief shall only increase for the unbelievers their own perdition. Noah is believed to have lived around 4,500 years ago in the region of Mesopotamia. Hud appears to have lived around the same time, likely in the southern Arabian Peninsula, possibly in Yemen. Salih is thought to have lived around 4,000 years ago in the northwest of Arabia. And after him there appeared from the Ridvan of the Eternal, the Invisible, the holy person of Salih, who again summoned the people to the river of everlasting life. For over 100 years he admonished them to hold fast unto the commandments of God, and eschew that which is forbidden. His admonitions, however, yielded no fruit, and his pleading proved of no avail. Several times he retired and lived in seclusion. All this, although that eternal beauty was summoning the people to no other than the city of God, even as it is revealed, and unto the tribe of Thamud we sent their brother Salih. O my people, said he, worship God, ye have none other God beside him. They made reply, O Salih, our hopes were fixed on thee until now, forbiddest thou us to worship that which our fathers worshipped. Truly we misdoubt that whereunto thou callest us as suspicious. All this proved fruitless until at last there went up a great cry, and all fell into utter perdition. As we can see, the pattern remains the same. Even when humanity fails to recognize the new message, God does not abandon us but continues to offer fresh guidance and renewed energy. It sounds like it is contemplating the deeper symbolic meanings behind the concept of utter perdition and how it might relate to the recognition, or lack thereof, of a manifestation of God and the rejection of his message. This is a profound perspective. In many religious traditions, perdition is often associated with the ultimate spiritual downfall or destruction, particularly in a state of ignorance or deliberate rejection of divine guidance. The idea that it could symbolize not recognizing God's manifestation at a particular time. The actual words are, "return to fire," so the very lack of recognition is considered fire. Later, the beauty of the countenance of the friend of God appeared from behind the veil, and another standard of divine guidance was hoisted. He invited the people of the earth to the light of righteousness. The more passionately he exhorted them, the fiercer waxed the envy and waywardness of the people, except those who wholly detached themselves from all save God, and ascended on the wings of certainty to the station which God hath exalted beyond the comprehension of men. It is well known what a host of enemies besieged him, until at last the fires of envy and rebellion were kindled against him. And after the episode of the fire came to pass, he, the lamp of God amongst men, was, as recorded in all books and chronicles, expelled from his city. Birth and early life. Abraham was born in Ur of the Chaldeans, modern-day Iraq. His father, Izar or Terah, was an idol worshipper, and the society around him practiced polytheism. As a child, Abraham questioned the worship of idols and recognized the existence of one true God. He rejected idol worship and called on his people to turn to the one true God. Challenged to idolatry, as Abraham grew older, he became a fierce critic of idolatry. One day, when his people were away, he destroyed all the idols in their temple, leaving only the largest one standing. When the people returned, they accused him of destroying their gods. Abraham used this act to question their beliefs, asking them if the idols could defend themselves. This enraged the people, and they decided to punish him. The fire, the king of the time, Nimrod, who was a tyrant, ordered Abraham to be thrown into a massive fire as punishment. However, by God's will, the fire became cool and harmless, and Abraham emerged unscathed, a miracle that demonstrated God's protection over him. The covenant and promise, Abraham's faith and obedience to God were tested through various trials. One of the most significant moments was when God commanded him to sacrifice his son, Isaac Ishmael, in some traditions. Just as Abraham was about to carry out the sacrifice, God intervened and provided a ram as a substitute. This act of submission to God became a symbol of ultimate devotion and faith. The building of the Kaaba, Abraham, along with his son Ishmael, is also credited with building the Kaaba in Mecca, which became a center of worship for the one true God. This act further cemented Abraham's role as a patriarch of monotheism. Legacy: Abraham is regarded as the father of monotheism because of his unwavering belief in one God. His story is a foundational part of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and he is considered a prophet in all three traditions. Throughout his life, Abraham's devotion to God was tested, but his faith remained steadfast, making him a model of piety and righteousness. And when his day was ended, there came the turn of Moses, armed with the rod of celestial dominion, adorned with a white hand of divine knowledge, and proceeding from the parent of the love of God, and wielding the serpent of power and everlasting majesty, he shone forth from the Sinai of light upon the world. He summoned all the peoples and kindreds of the earth to the kingdom of eternity, and invited them to partake of the fruit of the tree of faithfulness. Surely you are aware of the fierce opposition of Pharaoh and his people, and of the stones of idle fancy which the hands of infidels cast upon that blessed tree. So much so that Pharaoh and his people finally arose and exerted their utmost endeavor to extinguish with the waters of falsehood and denial the fire of that sacred tree, oblivious of the truth that no earthly water can quench the flame of divine wisdom, nor mortal blasts extinguish the lamp of everlasting dominion. Nay, rather, such water cannot but intensify the burning of the flame, and such blasts cannot but ensure the preservation of the lamp, were ye to observe with the eye of discernment, and walk in the way of God's holy will and pleasure. How well hath a believer of the kindred of Pharaoh, whose story is recounted by the All-Glorious in his book Revealed unto his beloved one, observed, and a man of the family of Pharaoh, who was a believer, and concealed his faith, said, Will ye slay a man because he saith, My Lord is God, when he hath already come to you with signs from your Lord? If he be a liar, on him will be his lie. But if he be a man of truth, part of what he threateneth will fall upon you. In truth, God guideth not him who is a transgressor, a liar. 9. Finally, so great was their iniquity that this selfsame believer was put to a shameful death. The curse of God be upon the people of tyranny. This is where it gets even more intriguing, as the history becomes more recent and the evidence clearer. With the passage of time, there are more writings and witnesses to consider. As Baha'u'llah's expressions reveal, many of the mysteries are now being unraveled. And as we've discussed before, more books are being unsealed, much like the wine has been unsealed.